What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kinnahan, and today we've got a lot to talk about because a lot's been going on with the Washington Commanders over the last few days. Plus, we have another football game for Washington to preview as well. So we've got a busy pod today. Kicking things off with the Terry McLaurin situation. We've got a little bit of an update with Terry just because of, the Burgundy and Gold scrimmage yesterday, which we'll also talk about in a little bit. He showed up and he had a conversation with Adam Peters. So what does that mean? How big of a deal is this new development? We'll get into that in a second. I mentioned already, but the Burgundy and Gold scrimmage happened for Washington. Dan Quinn and the coaching staff split up the staff and the players and the roster to two separate teams and hosted a scrimmage. This was because Washington had 13 days in between their games over the last. It wasn't 13 days, but it was like 10 days in between their preseason week 1 game and their preseason week 2 game. So instead of, kind of making things very repetitive over, a week and a half of practice, they decided to switch things up a little bit, put a little bit of a scrimmage in there. They played the second quarter and fourth quarter. So you got those end of half situations and game scenarios as well. So we'll get into that in a second as well. Just some takeaways from that, which happened on Tuesday. And then we'll get into the Bengals game on Monday. A little bit of an early preview. I'm heading out of town over the weekend, so a little bit of an early preview there as well. But let's just jump right into it. We'll start with the Terry McLaurin situation. The updates this week for Terry McLaurin, again, still searching for that new contract extension. Adam Peters kind of staying on his side. Terry McLaurin staying on his side. No one's really budged from the numbers that they've been willing to offer so far within those contracts. I mean, contract-wise, there really hasn't been much progress, you could say. John Kime reported that, Adam Peters is more at the $26 million mark per year, while Terry McLaurin is at the $33 million, or wanting more of what a DK Metcalf contract looked like, which for DK, it was $33 million per average per year, $60 million guaranteed. Which part of that what does Terry want? Does he want that $33 million per year? Does he want that $60 million guaranteed overall? Does he want both? Not really sure, but the news is that Terry definitely wants what DK Metcalf has, or something similar to that, because he views himself similar to DK Metcalf, which again, Metcalf is a couple years younger than him, just traded to a new team, which had to pay him a contract. So it's not entirely the same, but Terry thinks, he deserves that type of money. Okay, so what is new with this Terry situation? Well, he showed up to the Burgundy and Gold scrimmage on Tuesday. It was the first practice without fans, or not open to the fans. There was still some players friendly, friends and family there, but overall still not open to any fans, nothing like that. Which again, in the last couple of weeks with those practices open to fans, Terry has come out after practice to sign some autographs for the kids. He stopped doing that about right before they left or maybe it was right after. I think it was right before they left for New England. So right before they left for New England, he kind of stopped, going out and signing autographs for the fans. But then, and he continued to do that once they got back from New England as well, because they had practices open to fans on Sunday and Monday. But now here on the Tuesday, practice was not open to fans. It was just players, friends, and family. So he was out there for the entire practice. Like I said, in previous practices, he's only been out there post-practice to sign autographs for the kids. But now this time he was out there for the full practice. And that, of course, is because, he doesn't want to be a distraction. And with the fans there, Terry Chance would have started up within 5 minutes of the first person noticing Terry out onto the field. So it was definitely a good new development, but maybe a little bit of an expected one, you could say. Terry out there at practice watching that scrimmage. I think it's a combination of both the fans not being there and also him wanting to see what the scrimmage looked like, just because there's so much competition between those two teams. You had the Burgundy team, you had the Gold team, between, the teams within the team for Washington and within their roster. So again, he's still at the position meetings. He's still at the walkthroughs in the bubble. Apparently, he's also getting passes thrown to him from Jaden in the bubble as well before their outside practice later on in the day. So it's still he's still around the team. It's not like because fans don't see him at practice, he's just not in the building. He's still in the building. He's still participating with his, teammates and on the roster. So he definitely feels that competitiveness from this scrimmage or for the scrimmage, and that's why he was also kind of out there as well. Now, with him being out there on the field, he had a chance to talk to Adam Peters. There's videos of him talking to Adam Peters online. I believe it was a pretty quick conversation between the two. I've been waiting for a good lip reader to, tell me what they're saying. I haven't really found anything good yet, but it is. I wouldn't expect it to be much anyways, but it is the first time. It's noteworthy because it's the first time we've seen Adam Peters and Terry McLaurin talk to each other in public for since, this entire drama has gone down. And here I have the full timeline of Terry and what, we've kind of seen from Terry so far. July 15th, it was just under a month ago, which is kind of crazy. Just under about really a month, just one day less than a month. It's August 14th. So July 15th was when Terry spoke at the Eastern Motors commercial shoot, and he said that he was disappointed and frustrated with how things have been so far. It's crazy that was only a month ago. It's felt like it's been, 2 or 3 months, quite some time since that Eastern Motors commercial shoot right before training camp started. But that was really only a month ago. So you had that on July 15th. A week later, training camp begins for the Washington Commanders, and Terry McLaurin officially becomes a holdout. He does not report to training camp or report to the building for the first 4 days, I believe, of practices and of training camp. So he gets fined, $50,000 a day, total, of course, 200,000, which, according to the new CBA back in 2020, the team cannot waive that. They can't waive that type of fine anymore. So he really had to give back $200,000 to the team because he did not report. All right, July 27th. This was 5 days after Terry was a holdout. This is that following Sunday now. He reports the training camp without a new deal in place. This holdout now officially becomes a hold in. He's placed on the PUP list or the PUP list with an ankle injury. So still not participating in any, practices, nothing like that. But he is now in the building. So he's now no longer getting fined. That was July 27th. 4 days after that, July 31st, you could say all hell broke loose, really. And Terry McLaurin officially requested a trade, which would have never been on my, bingo card of what Terry McLaurin, especially like a year ago, Terry McLaurin and this team, Terry requesting a trade, just, that's not something that he does. Holding out from training camp, that's just not something that he does. It's just not part of who he is. And he did both within that, week and a half time span. But on July 31st, he officially requested a trade. And again, I've talked about it before, but it's kind of a trade request, but not really a trade request at the same time. I know Terry definitely wants to stay in Washington if he can, and he'd prefer Washington over anywhere else. So him officially requesting a trade is definitely, kind of strange, you would say. Not something he normally, would do. But at the same time, requesting a trade is kind of just part of what we've got now. What like is part of the negotiation process. It's one of the ways the player can gain leverage on the team and be like, hey, I want to weigh out. If you're not going to pay me, other teams will. I know that. So that is kind of what he used. That was one of his the last moves he could do. Because again, between Adam Peters and between Terry McLaurin, it's like a game of chess right now. And at this point, neither player or neither side really wants to make a move. This isn't speed chess. This is just regular chess because neither player wants to make a move between the two because we've really been out of stalemate for quite some time. Or since really that trade request from Terry. Between, him becoming a hold in, the trade request, and also not traveling with the team to New England on August 5th, which was, again, if he did not get a new contract, there was no point in him traveling anyway, so shouldn't have been a shock, but still, not great, you could say. There's been some reports about what side, maybe some leaked information that Adam Peters in the front office has like leaked out on purpose. Maybe some, reports on Terry's side that's kind of been leaked out a little bit on where both sides are at. I feel like now we have kind of firm knowledge of, hey, Adam Peters in the front office are at 26 million per year. Terry is kind of at that 32, 33 million per year range, or he's at the 60 million total guaranteed. That's kind of where these things stand for both sides right currently, which it took a little bit to get there for sure, because it took a little bit to get there because this front office, we saw it with the Jane Daniels pick. We saw it with some of these other moves that they've had. They are very, tight knit in who leaks out information and how much information is released to the public. So it took a while for us to get to, I mean, in some cases that's good, right? Because you don't want information to be leaked out. But in other cases, you do have to use the media. And in my opinion, Adam Peters and that front office, they should have used that move sooner, because this entire situation should have been done in May and June, right? And leaking that information that Terry, is asking for DK Metcalf money, maybe should have been done in May or in June, because it gives them more time to come together on an agreement. While now we are 3 weeks, 4 weeks away from 3 weeks away, really, from week 1 against the Giants. So that's pretty big. But between those two, that's just what I think on what Peter should have done. But here we are now, anyways, so it doesn't really matter. And here things kind of stand. So the latest development, again, being on Tuesday, when Terry was seen at practice, watching practice, talking to Adam Peters for the first time since, again, we've seen in public. I bet they've probably talked a little bit, at least since he's been in the building. But first time we've seen those two speak in public since the hold-in started. So that is kind of the timeline of with Terry and all of that. I missed out on some things, like the time when he came out to practice. I think it was the practice after he officially requested a trade, and like he hugged Regina Jackson, Jane's mom, and dapped up Josh Harris, who's again the owner of the team, and with all smiles and everything. So you can tell he still definitely wants to be in Washington. It's just he wants a new contract, and if I'd take a guess right now, I mean, last week I said it'd be done in the next week. I said that on the pod with Ben Belford Peltzman. I said it'd probably be done in the next week. Well, it's been a week and still nothing's been done yet. So I still believe that it's going to be done before this season. I think Jeremy Fowler said that there's a 20% chance he sees Terry not playing in week 1, or the deal not being done by week 1. So it's still, I would say, more likely than not, Terry signs an extension in the next couple of weeks. But at the same time, we are only 3 weeks away from week 1, which is not also a lot of time. But at the same time, it is, because this entire timeline happened in just 1 month. And I feel like so much has happened in just the last month. It's felt like forever. But that is kind of where things stand with Terry McLaurin currently. Let's move on now to the Burgundy and Gold scrimmage that happened on Tuesday. You guys have probably heard it by now, but Washington and the coaching staff, they split the team into 2 separate teams, the Burgundy team and the Gold team. The Burgundy team consisted of the first team offense and the second team defense. The Gold team consisted of the second team offense and the first team defense. So the results, the Gold team ended up winning 14-0. And I think the biggest takeaway that we saw, there weren't really many updates from the beat reporters. Lionel Willingham, he updated a lot, but beyond him, I didn't really see that many like live updates from the beat reporters. But from everything I've kind of gathered, it really sounded like the first team offense kind of struggled, and that was due to the pressure that Jayton faced. So the offensive line in particular did not do well, but you got to look at, there were 9 players that did not participate in the scrimmage. Terry, of course, being one of them. Brennan Coleman being another, and of course Sam Cosmi. So that's 2 starters on the defensive line, or on the offensive line, for Washington that did not participate in this scrimmage. Let me find out who the rest were. I know Noah Brown also did not participate. It was Noah Brown, Terry, Brennan Coleman. Hold on, I believe there was a few defensive players as well. I know Javonte Jean-Baptiste also did not participate. And Yeah, Jean-Baptiste, Noah Brown, Brendan Coleman, Jordan McGee was another one who did not participate in this. Um, I think that was kind of Bobby Price, but those were kind of the main ones. Marcus Mariota, I believe, also did not participate. So those were kind of the main ones, though. Again, pretty much everyone that kind of did not travel with the team to New England due to some type of injury or due to some type of uh, reason. I guess maybe it's an injury with Terry, but I think we all kind of know what that is. I feel like that ankle is going to get a lot better if he gets a new contract. So those guys did not participate, and maybe that's the reason why the first team offense struggled due to the pressure from that defensive line was because Coleman was out, was because Cosme was out. And Dan Quinn has said it that he is, he hasn't, raised the alarm or anything, but he has mentioned that he is maybe a little worried about this offensive line and the chemistry that this offensive line kind of will lack heading into week one, just because all five starters have not been out there really in practice. I would probably expect that to be the case. I would expect the offensive line, maybe struggle a little bit in the first few weeks of the season, but progressively get better as the season goes on. And that's just because Brandon Coleman's recovering from an injury. Cosme's status for week one is still up in the air. If I had to guess now, I'd probably say he doesn't play. But, he'll come in week 3, week 4, maybe after maybe placed on injured reserve originally and then comes back after that. So he might come in a month into the season and then maybe a slow ramp up for him as well. So this offensive line won't be fully healthy until halfway through the season. And that's if there's no new injuries, right? So this offensive line will probably struggle at the beginning of the season, maybe not heavily, but just because there's going to be a lot of movement in that first half. Once we get to the second half and this starting offensive line gets, multiple games playing together, then we can see some improvement. But I am kind of with Dan Quinn on this one. I am a little worried about, the chemistry and the synergy of this offensive line. Tunsil's looked great, right? Biotish, I would still expect to play great. The right tackle position is kind of up in the air with Wiley and Connerly. Who's going to start there? If I had to guess week one, it'd probably be Andrew Wiley, but really between the two, we could see a situation similar to what we saw from Brandon Coleman and Cornelius Lucas to begin last season, maybe 50-50. Every other drive they swap in and then swap out, which worked out pretty well for Washington at the beginning of last season until I believe Lucas got hurt for a little bit. Coleman also got hurt at some point as well last season, and now he's going to be moving inside. So just a lot of moving pieces with the addition of Laramie Tunsil as well. There's just a lot of moving pieces right now on Washington's offensive line, and I would not be surprised if they struggled a little bit to begin this season. Other things, the gold team won, which means the second team offense scored 2 touchdowns while the first team offense scored 0 touchdowns. So I guess that's good news for Sam Hartman and Josh Johnson within their battle to be the QB3 on this team, which would still be probably on the practice squad, but important to note. Other things, apparently Noah Benogany had a great day. There was a time I think he delivered a hit, or it was him or Sanders still that delivered kind of a big hit on Chris Rodriguez, if I remember correctly. And, the team got into a little bit of a scuffle. At this point, it's 100 million degrees outside, and, these are two teams competing against each other technically, right? Even though they're all on the same team, they split them into 2 teams, and it got very competitive, which you love to see. It doesn't really take that much for these players, really compete on the football field. So splitting them into 2 teams definitely, would do that. And I think it was Bobby Wagner and Frankie Luvu, I heard, that kind of, separated things out a little bit. But just important to note there. I really think this defense is going to improve from what we saw last season, especially on the pass rush side of things. I think Washington's not going to skip a beat on the pass rush side of things. There was some games where they really just could not get to the passer at all last season, especially beyond the Dante Fowler insanity run in the middle of the year. Washington just really lacked pass rush, which I think there's going to be improvement this season. It sounds like Von Miller, still seems to be very good. Dorrance Armstrong, is pretty good. There's a lot of depth on this defensive line, which is also going to end up leaving like a guy out here. I'll get into that position battle in a little bit, but when we talk about the second preseason game, But there's kind of a good amount of depth on this defensive line for Washington, which we didn't really see last year, right? The guys this year that'll be the backups, some of them were starters last season that played a majority of the game last year. And you can say the same thing with the offensive line as well, with Nick Allegretti, right? And Michael Dieter, who had to start a few games for Washington. Those were starters last year that will now be good depth pieces, even though you could say they were below average starters previously. Other things from that Burgundy and Gold scrimmage, um, other things from the Burgundy and Gold scrimmage, like I mentioned, it was on Tuesday, splitting the two teams. First team offense for Team Burgundy, second team offense for Team Gold, and it was flip flopped. So, you guys got the idea by now, but it was the first team offense going up against the first team defense, and the second team offense going up against the second team defense. Hopefully, there was improvement from Matt Gay. I didn't really hear much about his performance. I don't think he got a lot of, playing time beyond those 2 extra points, I'm assuming. So hopefully we can see improvement from him in this second preseason game as well. But overall, this Burgundy and Gold scrimmage, I thought it's a great idea, right? Because just because you have so much time in between the first 2 preseason games, you don't want things to get very repetitive out there for these players. And so Dan Quinn just adding this scrimmage as a which I just realized on the graphic, I spelled scrimmage wrong, but ignore that. the Dan Quinn just having the scrimmage for these players was just a pretty good idea in my opinion. And I know Bobby Wagner talked about it a little bit, but it just really sounded like something that a lot of these teams do. A lot of these NFL teams kind of been doing, but Washington, it's never really happened in Washington in a while. I can't remember the last time they had a within team scrimmage, which I know the Eagles have theirs, where that's open the fans and all of that. And they have that at their stadium, among these other teams that have these scrimmages within their team, open practices at their stadium. But for Washington, that hasn't really happened under previous regimes. So Dan Quinn, changing things up a little bit is something I really enjoyed. But that was the Burgundy and Gold scrimmage. Let's move on now to the game on Monday night. Washington will play Cincinnati. The starters are expected to play in this one, right? So that means Jane. That means the starting offense, starting defense. It's going to be a home game, prime time, ESPN. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm probably going to be there, which is going to be which is going to be pretty cool as well. But we don't know how much Jane's going to play yet. I would expect it to be announced sometime this weekend before they, get ready for the game on Monday night. Whatever the last practice is, I think that's probably Saturday or Sunday. Their last practice Saturday, maybe. Their last practice before the game on Monday. So James going to play, which is going to be great. I probably only expect him to play, a couple drives, a quarter maximum, but I'd be shocked if he even plays a quarter at this point. But it will be fun to see Jaden. The offense struggling in practices recently might be because Jaden has not really used his mobility to the best of his advantage in practice. He's kind of been working on, accuracy and staying in the pocket, being a better pocket passer. Because we know what Jane can do when he's out of the pocket, and it's kind of hard to just run around. I mean, it kind of takes away the point of practice a little bit when you can just run with your feet everywhere in practice, especially when they're not going 100% game speed as well. So we'll see Jaden in the game on Monday going that game speed. So we'll see what his legs are able to bring to this offense, which is a lot. And him not being able to really do that in practice so far may be one of the big reasons why Washington's first team offense has kind of struggled in recent days. Other things happening. So not only is Jaden playing, but all of the starters are playing, right? So probably the starting unit I'd be most excited to see out there is going to be that secondary, right? Lattimore, Amos, Sanderstill. Those guys, that trio has a whole lot of potential to be one of the best cornerback rooms in the National Football League if they can stay healthy, right? Amos has looked like a star. He did not play, or he did play a little bit in that first preseason game and looked pretty good. Sanders still did not play at all. Lattimore did not play at all, but I would probably expect both of those guys to play barring any injuries, anything like that, in the game on Monday night, just for a little bit as well, which that'll be fun to watch. Probably the position I'm most looking forward to seeing Other things, some big battles. Well, I guess, yeah, that's kind of the defensive side. More to stick with the offensive side, just some battles here on the offensive end. QB3, Sam Hartman, Josh Johnson. We know Johnson probably has a pretty big gap right now on Hartman just because of the performance from that first preseason game. We'll see both of those guys again. I don't know if we'll see Mariota on Monday night, but we'll probably see a lot of Hartman and Johnson again, at least a quarter for both of those guys, probably a little bit more for both as well. So QB3 still up in the air between those two. I wonder if they make a decision after this game, or will they make a decision after the third preseason game? We'll just have to wait and see. Wide receiver 6 is still up in the air as well. Ja'Cory Brooks, Michael Gallup, KJ Osborne, all kind of fighting for one spot, maybe two, but if I had to guess, it'd probably be one. Brooks, Gallup, and Osborne. Brooks looked pretty good in that first preseason game. He led the team in receiving yards. I'd expect him to lead the team in receiving yards again on Monday night. 5 catches on 5 targets for him, which was good. We didn't really see that. I believe Gallup had only 2 catches on 7 targets or something like that, and Osborne wasn't really involved that much for Washington in the first preseason game. So if I had to say wide receiver 6 position between those three, I'd probably lean towards Brooks or Gallup. We'll have to wait and see if they go with a young UDFA or if they will go with a veteran. But to me, Gallup just kind of lost his step. He's known for, his deep threat ability, his speed. I didn't really see him burning defenses against, the Patriots backup secondary or third string secondary in that first preseason game. So I would lean towards Brooks right now, but it's still kind of up in the air between those three. And of course, the rest of the wide receiver room. But I'd probably say this wide receiver 6 position goes to one of those three. Let's move on to the defensive side now. I already talked about the secondary a little bit, jumped a little ahead, but I want to talk about the defensive line because this to me is a position that's not really getting a lot of, or a unit that's not really getting a lot of talk, but a unit that we're going to see some, you could say maybe surprising cuts in this group because Washington last year kept 8 defensive linemen. This year, I expect them to probably keep 8 or 9. We'll wait and see, but they've got so many guys in this defensive line room. Armstrong, Payne, Kinlaw, Wise, Miller, Johnny Newton, or probably the 6 locks currently, right? Vaughn, you just signed. Kinlaw's on a big contract. Payne's your veteran. Armstrong still on a long contract. And Wise was a recent signing. Johnny Newton, of course, the second-year player, former second-round pick. Beyond that is really up in the air on who those final 2, maybe 3 players are. You've got Eddie Goldman if you want, better run defense, even though it didn't really seem to help that much in that first preseason game. Jalen Holmes had a pretty good first preseason game. He was one of Washington's highest grade players on the defensive side of the ball. Clelin Ferrell is an interesting one because I mentioned earlier how there's some starters or some players that were starters last year for Washington are going to be backups this year. For Ferrell, there's a good chance he doesn't make this roster. Like there is a legit chance he does not make this roster. With the way Jalen Holmes was playing that first preseason game, I don't know what's going to happen with Javonte Jean-Baptiste as well. That's kind of up in the air. Jacob Martin was a recent free agent signing who's kind of a pass rush specialist on third down. I liked what I saw out of him on last Friday. So there's still some guys that have kind of, joined Ferrell in this kind of group. I really think Ferrell has fallen off from the group of the Dietrich Wise, Johnny Newton. That's kind of the second unit. But Ferrell is kind of on that third unit, I feel like, or is on the border between the second and third, which he's getting pretty close to, being jumped even more in the depth chart and potentially not making this roster. I believe he was only guaranteed he only signed a 1-year deal and he wasn't guaranteed a lot of it. So his contract is definitely, you can definitely, release him and be okay. Jalen Holmes was playing well in that first preseason game. And if he has another good game, I definitely think he makes this roster. Eddie Goldman, if they really want someone who can stop the run, Goldman could be that guy for Washington. Sheldon Day and Carl Davis, both of those guys were getting playing time for Washington down the stretch in that playoff run. Either of those guys could potentially make a run at one of those final spots. And again, like I mentioned, kind of the wild card here, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, the 7th round pick back in 2024, has not really played or practiced that much yet this season just because of he's nursing an injury. So between those guys, Farrell, someone's going to be left out. Between Martin, Farrell, Goldman, Holmes, and Jean-Baptiste, of those 5, 3 of them max are going to make this roster, which is going to leave 2 or 3 of those guys off of this roster. And some of those guys will definitely be picked up by another team. If Farrell or Jacob Martin gets released, I definitely see them being picked up by another team. Same with Javonte Jean-Baptiste as well, even though I think there's maybe a chance that we see him, start on injured reserve this season. But yeah, that is kind of where things are at with this defensive line. I'm very interested and intrigued about what's going to happen with this defensive line. There's just a lot of names right now. There's a lot of names, and especially after this second game, I didn't even mention Andre Jones. I would probably expect him to be a practice squad guy again, but there's just a lot of names in this defensive line room, and it's going to be cut down soon. So that is something to keep an eye on. Other news here before we wrap up. Next podcast will be on Tuesday, recapping the game. But I did want to mention, I didn't put it in the rundown, but I do want to mention Dom Hampton was released. That's the first draft pick under the Peters Quinn era to be released by the team. Hampton was the 5th round pick for Washington in 2024. He really struggled against the Patriots. He really struggled. It was not pretty. And I know Washington last year kind of wanted him to be that safety linebacker hybrid, an athletic guy, but he just seemed he just was late to react to a lot in that game against the Patriots and really struggled. So unfortunately, they've released him. He is now, after he clears waivers, I believe, because he's on his rookie contract, he'll be open as a free agent. Washington did sign Duke Riley. That was probably the most notable of the signings, as they made a couple. Duke Riley is a linebacker. We'll see if he can compete for one of those final spots at linebacker. Really just at the linebacker position depends on how many do they want to keep, because Wagner's making it, Luvu's making it, Ballor's making it, Jordan McGee is making it. I put a question mark there at the end because, again, we're not entirely sure, but Medrano is going to be making it. So that's already 5. Duke Riley, they're not keeping 6 linebackers. Could we see, Riley, if Riley has a really good game in that second preseason game, it's going to get tricky. That's 2 young linebackers, McGee and Medrano. I would lean Medrano in that situation currently, as McGee did not play in that first preseason game due to injury. So again, he did not participate in the scrimmage as well. So he is also kind of, up, his status is up in the air as well. But that is pretty much that. That will wrap up this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Next episode will be out recapping the game Tuesday morning, recapping Washington's second preseason game against the Bengals. It's going to be a fun one. I'm going to be at the game at Northwest Stadium. It's going to be a great time. That'll be it, though, for myself, Mason Kinnahan. I've been your host here at Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.